When Emily Thompson woke up in a place she didn't recognize, she assumed she had been in a coma. But the more she explored, the clearer it became that this wasn't a hospital room, and she wasn't in control of her own fate. Now, trapped in a place between life and death, Emily must uncover the truth of what happened to her before it's too late, or she'll become another whisper lost in the void. It was supposed to be just a quick errand. Emily had gone out to buy some groceries on a Friday afternoon. The sun was shining, traffic was light, and everything felt normal. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. She didn't remember the accident. One moment she was crossing the street, and the next, everything went black. When Emily opened her eyes again, she wasn't in a hospital. She wasn't even in the world she knew. She sat up, her heart pounding in her chest, but there was no pain, no ache. She was perfectly intact. But when she looked around, she couldn't recognize her surroundings. She was in an endless, empty room, a vast expanse of white with no doors, no windows, and nothing but a faint, unsettling hum that seemed to reverberate through her very soul. She stood up, trying to steady her breathing. This wasn't right. Her mind raced as she scrambled for a logical explanation. Had she suffered a concussion? Was she hallucinating? "Hello?" she called out, but her voice seemed to disappear before it even reached her ears. Her pulse quickened as she began walking. The walls, if they could even be called walls, seemed to stretch on forever, and yet no matter how far she went, there was no exit, no end. She tried to run, but it was as if the space itself was swallowing her. Time itself seemed to stretch and warp, and the further she went, the more suffocating the silence became. Then the whispers started. At first they were faint, almost imperceptible. But as Emily walked deeper into the empty space, they grew louder, more distinct. Words, but not words. Murmurs, like voices trying to reach her from far away. "Help me. Don't leave me." Her heart stopped for a moment. The whispers sounded familiar. She could almost hear her own name in them. She hurried forward, pushing through the thickening silence. The whispers continued to call her, urging her, but it was as though they were coming from every direction at once. She spun around in circles, trying to make sense of it. "Is anyone there?" Emily shouted, her voice now strained with fear. But instead of an answer, there was only more silence. And then a figure appeared in the distance. It was a woman, standing still in the vast emptiness. Her features were obscured by the bright light that seemed to halo around her, but Emily could make out the shape of her, tall, with long dark hair, and something about her presence felt wrong. "Who are you?" Emily called out, her voice trembling. The woman didn't answer at first. Instead, she moved toward Emily, slowly and deliberately, her expression vacant, as though she didn't see her at all. The closer she came, the more Emily felt the dread building inside her, until it was suffocating. This wasn't right. This wasn't real. "Please, help me," Emily begged. But the woman continued to walk until finally she stopped just in front of her. And then, the woman's voice echoed inside Emily's head, sharp, cold, and haunting. "You don't belong here." Emily stepped back, her chest tightening. "What do you mean? Where am I? What's going on?" The woman's face twisted, the edges of her mouth curling into something like a smile, but the look in her eyes was void of any warmth. It was a look of recognition, of knowing. "You are dead, Emily." Her words struck like ice, freezing Emily in place. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. No, I can't be," Emily cried out. "This can't be happening." But the woman merely stared at her, unblinking, as if waiting for the truth to settle in. Emily's thoughts began to spin wildly. No, this couldn't be real. She had so much more to live for. She had a life. She had Daniel. But as the woman's words reverberated in her mind, Emily's own memories began to flicker, like images in a shattered mirror. The things she had taken for granted, the words she hadn't said, the time she had wasted. Regret started to build like an insidious fog, choking her. Please let me go back," she whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. The woman stepped closer. the whispering voices now deafening, almost overwhelming her. "There is no going back," the woman replied coldly. "Not this time." Suddenly, Emily's legs buckled beneath her, her body sinking to the floor. She felt cold, so cold, and in that moment it became clear. This wasn't just some dream. This was real. This was the end. The woman's expression softened just slightly. "You must face your truth," she murmured, her voice now gentle. "The past cannot be outrun, but only once you accept it can you truly rest." In that moment, Emily understood. The regrets, the unanswered questions, the guilt, it all had to be confronted. She had never truly dealt with the darkness inside her. She had run from it, thinking she could escape. But now, it was staring her in the face. Emily closed her eyes, accepting the darkness, the weight of her own past. But as the world around her began to shift, slowly fading into nothingness, she heard one last whisper, not from the woman, but from somewhere far beyond. "Is this the end?" And in the silence that followed, Emily realized one terrifying truth. Death wasn't an escape. It was only the beginning of an endless search for redemption.